Happy Wednesday. I'm glad to be back with you. I'm still Miss C. We're still working on summarizing nonfiction text, and we are going to keep with the strategy we've been using, the 5 W's, 1 H, but we're going to add one thing onto it to make our summaries richer, specifically when we're working with sequential text. Sequential text we see the most often in historical and biographical text. So this is any time that we are working with a piece of text that goes in order and is focusing a lot on the dates and the times. Our goal for today is to be able to summarize using supporting details in a sequential informational text. When we look at the word sequential, what we'll see in it is sequence. And sequence is any time that we're working with the dates and times in order from start to finish. So the example that I have on this slide is the developmental stages for cats. If you've been in my class all year at Overby Shepherd, you know that I love cats as much as I love teaching you all. If you're only my student for this week, now you know. What we notice is that it gives us a timeline similar to a number line that we use in math, and gives us the important dates and times and what is happening at those dates and times. One thing that we see in this infographic is a spread of years rather than just isolated events that happen every couple of years. Our text might have both things, events that occur for a number of years or decades at a time, and things that are important, like accomplishments or big days that are just a one-time occurrence. When we're writing our summaries or talking about what's happened in our text, we want to be really careful to make sure that our reader understands the flow. We can organize our text by using the transitional words. Some that we might use to keep the order simple to understand for our listener or reader that didn't read the text include things like first, next, then, last. As we're getting started, I want to start our graphic organizer and then do our timeline later. We'll start with our W. If you're writing this on your paper, I'll walk you through this, but otherwise you can use the graphic organizer that's attached to our who, what, when, where, why, and our how. Yesterday, when we talked about procedural text, we worked a lot with the how, because the how showed the process. And procedural text is all about the process and the steps in the order that they happen. For sequential text, so biographies, histories, things like that, what's going to be really important for us is the when. So you might leave yourself some extra space for the when. If you're using this graphic organizer, you'll just want to make sure that your when here in the middle is what you put the most heart into. The text that we are going to work with today is from 5thELA, and it is linked, but I want to read this one with you so that we can get the important dates and times figured out together too. This one is a profile of a kind of historical athlete. Oh, that's fine. Alrighty. Duke Kahanamoku. Duke Kahanamoku grew up near the beach. He quickly became strong in the water. He excelled at water sports like swimming, surfing, diving, and sailing. These activities were once at the heart of Hawaiian culture, but most people had stopped doing them by the time Kahanamoku was born. Christian missionaries had come to Hawaii in the 1800s. They thought surfing was lazy. They believed it stopped people from working. Kahanamoku loved the ocean, and he eventually dropped out of high school to spend more time there. He started a surf club with his friends and became a competitive swimmer. His flutter kick became known as the Kahanamoku kick. One thing you'll notice as I'm reading is that I had already gone through and highlighted the important dates and times. You can do this as a pre-reading strategy, and once you're done reading, weigh what the most important dates are, and that's what we'll do together today. But you can also go through and annotate, which means to write on our text, the important dates and times after you've read the first time by skimming. Back in the text. Olympic star. The following year, Kahanamoku competed in the 1912 Olympics. He was the only Hawaiian member of the U.S. team. He won a gold medal and a silver medal in swimming. One sports writer called Kahanamoku a human fish and the greatest swimmer the world of sport has ever seen. Kahanamoku returned in 1920 to win 2 gold medals. He became the oldest swimmer in Olympic history to win an individual gold. He held that title for 96 years. Michael Phelps beat his record in 2016. Phelps was 31 years old. 1 week after Phelps beat the record, another swimmer beat him. Anthony Irvin, 35, is now the oldest swimmer to win an Olympic gold medal. Heroism and Hollywood. Kahanamoku became even more well-known for a rescue at sea. In 1912, a fishing boat capsized in dangerous waters off the coast of California. It sent dozens of fishermen into the Pacific Ocean. Kahanamoku was surfing in the area when the accident happened. He rescued 8 of the fishermen by pulling them onto a surfboard and carrying them to safety. In all, he and 2 other surfers rescued 12 fishermen. Unfortunately, 17 others did not survive. By then, Kahanamoku was the most famous Hawaiian in the U.S. He was offered small parts in Hollywood movies. He appeared in more than a dozen movies from 1925 to 1955. Discrimination and hardship. Kahanamoku was one of the few non-white swimmers of the time. He was often treated differently than white swimmers. He was sometimes denied service at restaurants and hotels. He also had difficulty with money at times. After dropping out of school, Kahanamoku had a few low-paying jobs. However, Kahanamoku did earn quite a bit of money in the 60s, starring in advertisements for beach products. Ambassador to the world. Kahanamoku traveled around the world in the 1920s and 1930s. Wherever he went, he gave surfing demonstrations. Thousands of people showed up. He preached about the joys of surfing. He also explained how important it was in Hawaii. Kahanamoku loved to greet visitors to Hawaii. He taught the hula to England's Queen Mother Elizabeth when she came to Honolulu. Kahanamoku was appointed Hawaii's official greeter in 1960. Death and legacy. Kahanamoku was buried at sea. It was the same beach where he had first been introduced to the water. He received many honors for his swimming and surfing career. He also was honored for his contributions to Hawaiian history. In 1999, Surfer magazine named him Surfer of the Century. A Hawaiian king named King Kamehameha made a prediction in the 1800s. He said that one day, a native Hawaiian man would bring great fame to the islands. Many Hawaiians of his generation consider Duke Kahanamoku to be that man. I'm going to give you the length of one song to write out your 5 W's and 1 H. But first, I want you to consider, did you like this text? And if you did, what did you like? As we're thinking about writing summaries, I want to keep the purpose in mind. The purpose for any reading is to be able to learn more about our world around us. I hope that you did like this text. And the other purpose for reading and writing summaries is to be able to share what we learn with other people. So if you did like this, I would encourage you to kind of verbalize how you felt about it to someone else in your home or on the phone later today. It'll get you in the practice of talking through the important parts and kind of reconnect what we're doing in school with your actual interests and your actual passion. You'll have about 4 minutes to work through your graphic organizer. I'm going to write mine on this whiteboard And then when we talk through it together, move it into the graphic organizer because we'll need them tomorrow. Tomorrow and Friday, we're going to work on writing summaries after using these graphic organizer strategies. So you want to make sure you're really neat and give yourself a really good starting point to have for tomorrow. Okay. Ready? Don't worry about your timeline, just your 5W strategy right now. And go. Okay, about 1 more minute. All right, and that's time. Okay, for our summarizing strategy with the 5 W's and 1 H, or who, is really simple. We usually find this within the first paragraph or our title. And for us, right there, Duke Kahanamoku. For our what, this can also be found pretty early on in your text. And for us, A good answer would be influential surfer, Olympian, advocate for surfing or Hawaii. You could have also said, or you could have said any of these things, and they would have been appropriate as long as you get the other key details that back them up. For or when, this is where the bulk of our information comes. And I want to get deeper into this during the timeline that we work on together. But all of these seem to take place between the 1900s and the 1960s. I put the more specific dates below that so that I remember to touch on them during the timeline. For where, we're in Hawaii. It does talk about some other places too, but when we're working on our summaries and even the pre-writing organizers that go before our summaries, we want to be sure that we're getting the most important information for our readers or listeners. Why? Because it was a part of his culture and surfing was important to him. For the how, I'm thinking about the big picture. How did he accomplish all of these things? And the best answers for these that kind of get everything that the article talked about was that he put a lot of practice into what he cared about, and his passion drove him to accomplish all of these things and work really hard at it. Now we're ready to go back to our annotations, the highlighted parts, and get our timeline set. To start your timeline, keep all of these, all the stuff we work on today, keep for tomorrow. For your timeline, it's going to start looking like a number line like we would make for math. On our timeline, we are going to work from the beginning to the end, start to finish. At the beginning of the text, it talks about what he was like when he was a kid and kind of what came before his life. There's another part in the text that discusses something that happened before his life that was important too. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to try and find it. If we were in class, I would challenge you, and I challenge you to do this at home too. Put your finger on the page or your cursor, your arrow, when you find it. Ready? Think about it. What is the other part of the text that happens at the very beginning, even before his life? Ready to find it in 5, 4, 3, 2. It's like a couple hundred years before his life, but it's still important. And 1. We find this actually all the way at the end of the text, because what our author has done is a writing technique called circling back. At the end of the text, they brought it all the way back to before Kanahama's life even began, with a prediction made by a Hawaiian king in the 1800s. It says that the king said, one day a native Hawaiian man would bring great fame to the island. So that might be our starting point. Sometimes the really special word that we might use is prophecy. If someone says something special is going to happen in a number of years, they make a prediction. We might call it a prophecy. So great prediction or prophecy. So the king predicted a famous islander who was later believed to be Kanahama. So we'll put our information below, and on the top of our timeline, we'll put the time it happened, so 1800s. After this, we're going to get all the way back to the beginning, and on your timeline, you could add in about when he was a kid, but I want to get to the very most important parts that we'll put into our summary tomorrow when we write them, so that our reader gets the full picture in the most efficient way possible. So in 1912 and 1920, he was in the Olympics. Put your date on top. He was an Olympic swimmer. The next date that we have is 1925, and this is when he rescued the fishermen. So, rescue. One thing you might consider doing for your timeline is put the paragraph number if you're using paper, so that tomorrow you can go back and find the evidence from the text about this. The next thing that we're going to have For the next couple dates that we have take place around the same time and have to do with the same general idea. They're all about Kanahama being a sort of spokesperson for surfing in Hawaii, and a role model to many people too. So I'm going to bundle all of these dates together, because here we see 1925 to 1955, down here 20s and 30s, 1960, all the same idea of what he's doing though. So I'm going to bundle them to be in an era. So between the 1930s about and 60s. He was a spokesperson for Hawaii. The abbreviation is HI and surfing. Now that we have both of our organizers set, our timeline, and our 5 W's, we're going to keep these so that tomorrow we can move them into a piece of writing. We'll be writing 1 paragraph summaries tomorrow and on Friday. During your practice today, you are going to get to choose from a couple different text options. They're all going to be sequential text, so you'll want to focus a lot on the when, on the dates. The options are about the person who came up with what is still considered today to be the most effective treatment for cancer. You can read an article about the history of Earth Day, which happened on April 22nd, so last week. Or you can read about the history of chocolate around the world. For these, I'm going to invite you to create both, after reading, your 5 W's 1H organizer, and highlight your dates and make your timeline too. I hope you feel confident about summarizing in nonfiction text, especially within sequence. I want you to bear in mind as you get started that you can do this because you're a good reader, and good readers summarize the supporting details using their strategies. So the 5 W's 1H strategy, the timeline strategy, using our key dates from the text. And the whole point of all of this is to be able to give what we know to other people through our writing. I'll see you back here tomorrow, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.